Hey guys, today's topic is emotions, chasing them down and transforming them. And there'll probably be cameos from Floof as usual because he's decided he is my co-vlogger. Um, so just like a physical problem that you would have, like an injury or some sort of physical ailment, that physical ailment is trying to tell you something about your body, right? Like something needs to be changed, something is problematic, and usually you need to investigate that and figure out what the problem is with your physical issue. So I see emotions as the same. Emotions are a way for your body to tell you something about your environment, about your life, and until you figure out what the cause of those emotions are, you're not going to be able to address them properly, just the way you would at a medical condition if you didn't know the root cause. So one of my friends described emotions, to really explore them, to chase them down to the root. And I think that's a good explanation of what you need to do when you have an emotion that you need to figure out what is causing it. And then once you figure out what is causing it, you can then figure out, is there something that I need to change about myself or about my reaction to the world? Or, is this the genesis of that emotion something I can transform into something positive? Now that I understand the root of that emotion, maybe I can react out of love instead of anger or whatever it is. So it depends on the scenario, what emotions you're having, and after you chase it down, figuring out like what exactly is the cause of it, will determine what you're going to do going forward. And I think a lot of times people who are into like self-help and other stuff sometimes glaze over the emotion, like, oh, let's just turn it directly into a positive and don't even think about that negative thing. But I think you have to look deeply into it, because if you just glaze over it, you're actually not fixing the issue that's causing that emotion or that situation that's causing that emotion. So if you just try to say, oh, I'm just going to be positive and forget about that emotion, that lingers there and it festers and it can come up again in a worse way, or just stays embedded in your psyche or your spiritual psyche, and you don't ever really address it, and so it's never really resolved. And then people who try to glaze over this stuff end up maybe down the line having to deal with it, or having worse issues come up. And a lot of times I feel like this happens in our society. People try to medicate things away when really it's probably an emotional problem that if they chased it down to the root and had the emotional and wherewithal to deal with it, that they wouldn't even need certain medications or certain things, because they'd be able to address it themselves and not have to go that route. Take a self-discovery route instead of just glazing over that emotion and trying to push it down deeper, instead of exposing it and yanking it out if you need to, or transforming it. So I'm going to give you a couple examples in my life when I've had to do this. I'll give you some big ones first and then some little ones. So with my horse, I had purchased this horse, and the woman who sold me this horse, she was not honest with me, and she did not disclose that he had a severe bucking issue and some severe behavioral issues. So once I tried him and he was fine, I tried him at her place, and then when I got him home, he just totally rodeoed me, bronked me off, and I was just distraught. And to make a long story short, she said that he never did this before. Something must have happened when he got to my place. I was able to find and track down someone, a very experienced rider who had ridden this horse, who told me he rode it at a show and it acted like an unbroke horse, and he actually fell off of that horse, and another person fell off of that horse at that show because he was behaving so badly, and that was 2 months before I bought him. So this produced a lot of upset, anger, hurt, resentment, betrayal, all these emotions I was having because of this situation. And it was really painful, and it caused me a lot of anguish. And the woman would not take back the horse. She would not give me any money to help retrain this horse, who needed, professional training to get past what his issues were. So I spent probably 8 or 9 months, going back and forth with this woman, having this like negative interaction, having all these negative feelings. And, I realized that, when chasing this down to the root, I felt betrayed. I felt upset at this situation that I now was put in and had to spend all this money. And I looked at it and said, okay, there's nothing I can necessarily change about myself that will fix this situation, but there is something I can do to put it in a different perspective. So instead of just this being this, horrible betrayal, I decided that I needed to release this and forgive this woman and let it go so that I could then focus my energy, instead of focusing on the negative and this woman who, hurt me. I was going to focus on fixing my horse and getting him to a better place and using my energy in that fashion instead of, focusing on the negative. And the only way to really let this go, so it wasn't constantly in the back of my mind saying, oh, you could still write a bad review, you could still go after her legally, all sorts of stuff. I decided to write her an email, and I wrote her an email. And I said, basically, you sold me this horse, you did not disclose these issues. It caused me, emotional, financial, and marital stress. It endangered my life and, all these other things, and just spoke my truth. And then I said to her, I forgive you for that. And I release you of any negativity from my end. And I hope that in the future, you will deal with people honestly and with love, and see how wonderful your life can become when you deal with people like that, instead of dealing people, with dishonesty. So it was interesting because my horse was making progress. But after that point, my horse started making even more progress. And I think it was because, for me, it changed him. It changed him from being a symbol of hurt, of pain, of anguish, of betrayal, to a symbol of forgiveness, to a symbol of unconditional love for him and for this person who, who had these actions against me. And it immediately shifted the situation, because I chased down that emotion to the root and said, hey, I can't change this situation. It's not possible for me, but I can change my perspective on the situation and what feelings I'm going to have about this and how I'm going to address that going forward with my energy. And my horse now he's it's a journey, but we have made a ton of progress, and his and I, bond and relationship has blossomed. So now I see him as, like the symbol of love and forgiveness. And, it really changed the whole scenario for me, and it changed my emotions about it. And it changed that deep feeling in me from one of pain and suffering to one of love and forgiveness and looking toward the future. So that's one situation, and that situation was one that I couldn't change the circumstances, but I could change my viewpoint on it. But I had to. Emotions are perfectly valid, and it's perfectly valid to be angry and upset and different things. And you need to experience those emotions, but you need to explore them and look into them and like what they're telling you. And if they're telling you, maybe this is the wrong way to address a situation, let's address it in a way that produces a better emotion. You can make that change within yourself. And when you change that, your life will steer towards the positive. So I'm going to give you one other one that I guess I couldn't really change the circumstance, but I could change my view of it. So when my mother passed, she, obviously, like, it was a very difficult situation. I felt, immense grief, as everyone does when they lose someone close to them. Just this terrible grief that you feel like you're thrown into an abyss, with your heart ripped out, and it just feels awful, and you're just upset, and, all this pain, from this person no longer being in your life. But I think when you look into that pain and you look into those feelings, what is at the root of that? The root of that is your love for that person. So all of those feelings are coming from love. And when I chased that down, I realized, all these feelings are because I loved her. And maybe some of those feelings, like if I felt guilty about something, it was because I felt like I didn't do something. No, what did I do? I need to forgive myself. So that was the action I took. And if those feelings were based in love, I was like, okay, it just showed me how much I loved this woman in my life. And, it showed me more about living and how I needed to live and interact with people than probably all of my years combined here. Having that grief really gave me an appreciation for life, and to look into life, and to look into like what did life really mean, and what did her life mean, and what, you know, what is really going on, you know, in this world. And it made me look into it, you know. And people sometimes don't do that. People sometimes just take like, you know, woe is me, you know, this person died, now I'm super upset, now I'm lonely, and like pity me. And, you know, it's fine to have certain feelings like that, but then I think you need to figure out within yourself how you're going to transform that into a positive, because all that grief is love. It's really just love for the person that is gone, and, you know, obviously loss, but that can tell you something more about life. That can tell you something more about living. That can tell you something more about your relationships. And if you chase that down to the root and see what that is, and you really look into that, you can figure out how to steer your life more toward the positive. And I feel like I've been able to do that. And because I've done that, because I chased that down the road and realized it's just love, it's just, you know, love for this person, how am I going to take that love forth? Am I going to grow more grief and more sadness from that situation? Or am I going to grow something beautiful from that situation? Am I going to grow something positive? Am I going to grow as a person from that scenario? And that's what I chose to do. And that's, you know, it made me more at peace with the situation too. So now I can talk about, I mean, I will still have moments where I will get sad about my mom, and maybe I'll cry or something. But I mean, that's so different than how I was, you know, several years ago, just because of the amount of peace I have from sort of understanding this, looking into this, and seeing what it was telling me. And for me, it was telling me, look into the spiritual. You know, that was what it was telling me. I might tell everybody something different, but I think it can tell you about love, it can tell you about life, it can tell you about the different relationships and how important they are. This video is getting long. Sorry. So let me give you a couple more examples that are more like day-to-day, because this is something you can use every day in your life to deal with different issues that come up. So let me give you a small one, which is something I could change about my situation. So in the morning, you know, I don't like to, you know, being rushed creates a lot of stress, and I feel stressed, and I feel harried, and I feel, I don't know, just like anxious, and I don't like that. I don't like having to rush Leah, you know, to get her to school. You know, it's a lot of stuff when you have a kid in the morning, feed them and dress them and get their lunch and put sunscreen on them, all this stuff. So it was creating this environment where I was constantly like annoyed at Leah for not moving fast enough. And I looked at that situation and I said, okay, I'm annoyed. Why am I annoyed? I'm annoyed because I'm late. I'm annoyed because this is creating anxiety. I'm annoyed because, you know, now I feel rushed. What do I need to do about that? Like, I could every morning be griping at Leah to go faster because she's 4 and she doesn't know how to move super fast and doesn't really have time agendas the way adults do. Or I could wake up 15, 20 minutes early and not have a rushed morning. So that was a very simple one. I looked at that emotion, what's causing it, why is it annoying, what do I need to do about it, and, you know, easily could make a change in my life to change that and to move that to a better situation. So now I get up a little bit earlier. I also modified some of our schedule in the morning, so I bring her clothes down and I'm not in her room trying to tell her to get her clothes on, so she's downstairs. So, you know, sometimes you look into an emotion and you say, okay, how do I change this for the better? What do I need to do and change this for the better? Let me give you another one that's like more of like an emotional, like dealing with your emotional problem within yourself. So say you're in a relationship and you're a very jealous person, or you feel jealous because your significant other is going out a lot with his friends or not spending enough time with you, you know, and you feel kind of upset, you're resenting them, you're jealous, you know, you have these various feelings and emotions about that. So this is a situation where you can kind of go either way. So you could look into that and say, okay, I love this person. I want him to spend time with me. I value our relationship. That's at the root of this emotion. There's nothing negative necessarily at the root of that emotion. It's just that you care about that person and you want to spend time with them. Okay, so you need to, at this point, and everything is sort of, you need to use your own internal compass to judge these things, and that's why it's good to meditate and be balanced and be a balanced person so that you can make these judgments accurately. And you could say, hey, is it me being insecure? Is that something within me telling me that this person, I'm afraid that he will leave me. I'm afraid that, he doesn't love me, or whatever the scenario is. Is it something within me that needs to be resolved? Is that not a problem actually in a relationship, one I'm creating because of my own insecurities? And if that's the case, then obviously, you can address that in many different ways. Finding ways to build yourself up, finding things that you love to do so that you're not just waiting for that person to come back, create your own life, create your own enjoyment in life that is, separate from that person as well. And also, maybe talking with them about that and expressing, why you're feeling that way, and you're working on it. And then perhaps that person is doing something wrong, and you have that feeling because they're cheating on you, or, they're not putting you first, or they're not treating you with the respect you deserve. And this is a judgment call that you need to make in these types of situations. You need to look into that emotion and see what is the real scenario. The root of it is, I love this person and this person means a lot to me. But, is it me, or is it the situation, or is it that person who's causing the situation? And that person is either, neglecting his duties in the relationship. If that's the cause, then address the cause. And if that means having a discussion with them about priorities and where where your relationship stands in that, or if that person is stepping on your boundaries and you actually need to release that person and not be in a relationship with them, that's another thing. So that's another instance of, you had this emotion, you were jealous, you were hurt, and you chase that down. And what is that? What is causing that? How do you resolve that, either within yourself, within the situation? And you can do this with any sort of emotion. And this is why you shouldn't gloss over an emotion, because that emotion is telling you something about yourself. It's telling you something about the situation. And if you just gloss over it and don't look into it and explore it, then you've missed the opportunity, to make yourself a better person and to grow from that. And you probably are going to exacerbate the situation, and it'll be bigger and more explosive, and it'll eventually, like the relationship thing, right? Eventually maybe it's going to blow up and he's going to cheat on you. You're going to walk in on him hooking up with a girl, or you're going to get so upset, because you're insecure, that you're going to push that person away and you're going to end the relationship. So instead of delving into that emotion, you've now, either blown up a relationship because of your own insecurities, or, you stayed in a relationship too long and you've created more hurt and more pain because you're in a relationship that's not good for you. So, emotions are telling you something. Listen to them, look into them deeply, find the root, figure out the cause, and then transform them or rip it out. So it's up to you. And I think you all need to use your own judgment there. All right. I'll talk to you guys later.